Ladies and gents, it is my pleasure to bring to this virtual stage from Batman to the Joker, ladies and gents. First and foremost, let's give it up for Mr. Robert Wuhl. Next up, we have Brett Cullen.
Hey! Oh, there we go.
There we go. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Michael Uslan. Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Hey. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing? How are you guys surviving 2020 right now? Are you guys doing okay?
Awesome. It's great. All I do is sit inside and have an excuse to write, and I'm accomplishing so much more now on the writing side than I have in years.
Best outlook possible. I like that.
Michael, I need to get my Murray Franklin hat. I've got it in the closet.
I wore it for you, Brett. This is why I wore it today.
I know.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Brett, Robert, how are you guys doing these days? Are you guys staying safe and sane?
Well, yeah, I'm doing fine. We talk with Brett every now and then, my old buddy. So I mean, you get along. I mean, it's 2020. You got to get past 2020.
Of course. We literally got people from all over the world tuning in right now. So we've got folks from Washington, D.C., Mexico, Israel, Oregon, New Jersey, all over the map here. So people are tuning in, very eager to talk to you guys. We're going to talk about Batman and Joker and all the goodness in between. But first and foremost, I got to get this out of the way. So Robert and Brett, you guys went to college together?
Yeah, we went to the University of Houston.
Okay, so you guys have known each other for a long time. I'm expecting some hidden secrets to come out here. So I want as much teasing as possible. Okay, I'm just throwing it out there, letting you know. And
well, Robert's math's not real good, but I was 17 when I went to the University of Houston the first year, and that's where I met Robert and our friend Tim, who's no longer with us, and Dennis Quaid, who was at school.
Of course. That's awesome. What's one of the things that really makes an endearing friendship like that?
Well, it's interesting because Robert was, and correct me if I'm wrong, he was an English major who finally transferred over to the theater department. And I was a guy, I mean, my hair's really long. I haven't had haircuts since December because I ventured out except to surf or golf. But when he was there, I don't think you ever did a play with Cecil, did you?
No, he was smart enough not to cast me.
Right. But Robert, was sort of a comedian. You were writing a musical, I remember, and I was, a long-haired surfer dude who had done one play in high school. And my brother convinced me to take theater, and we were sort of, in my mind, I actually look back on it, think of us as the underdogs. We weren't those theater kids, and yet we succeeded. And he's the first person I saw when I moved out to Los Angeles because I'd been here for a while, and then finally I said, okay, I'm gonna go out. And I drove down Sunset. And there is a Comedy Store, Robert? Is that what it was? Mm-hmm. And I pulled in. I went, I've heard of this place. So I parked and paid my $10 and got my 2 Heineken beers. There's 2-drink minimum. And out walks Robert Wuhl on stage. That's how we reconnected. And finally, awesome. I called him that day and left a message, but he hadn't gotten it yet. But yeah, we've known each other a long, long time. So I think the enduring thing is both of us are, solidly working in this industry, and we you share that, and we've just always stayed in touch. So
that's so cool.
Friendship is.
I love hearing that, celebs like you guys are regular people and have best friends that you hang out with or reconnect with. It gives hope for all of us little folks to know that you're never too big to have your besties. There's nothing wrong with that. So one of the things that's bringing us all together is obviously conversations about Batman, the Dark Knight. We're going to talk about some Joker goodness. Being one of the most iconic fictional characters of all time, let alone in comics, I got to know, when did you first get introduced to Batman? Michael, I got to know from you, when did you first get introduced to Batman?
I was 5 years old.
Really?
And deep into Superman because Superman was on TV, because I'm a couple of generations older than these gentlemen. And
I don't think
and my brother put me up on his shoulders to reach up to the top of a comic book rack. And I remember seeing an issue of Detective Comics that had a Batmobile that looked like an assault tank. That was the first one I remember. But Batman was a little dark and scary for me. It wasn't until I was a much more mature and sophisticated 8-year-old that I really got into Batman, and that took over my life. More so than Superman or the Hulk or any of the other superheroes. This guy was human. He had no superpowers. And I contend to this day that his greatest superpower is his humanity.
Oh, that's very true.
He also had that car, which was amazing. He had the greatest rogues gallery in the history of comic books, including inarguably the greatest supervillain ever created, The Joker by Bill Finger and Jerry Robinson. And he had the most primal origin story. I'll tell you, when I was 8, 9 years old, I never thought one day my parents might die. And to read this story, it affected me in a real long-term way. So Batman became my guy, and I became the boy who loved Batman.
Dude, I love that. I absolutely love that. Robert, Brett, how did you guys first get introduced to Batman? Were you comic book fans before you're working on anything with it?
Well, I remember the 4th grade, we got in trouble because my friend, I think his name was Jamie Johnson, we used to play Batman and Robin on the field. All the kids would attack us, and then Jamie would be attacked and he'd go, Robin, help. And I come over and throw kids off of him and, all that stuff. But that was my introduction, just because, my family, we like comic books and stuff. But we had fun. We also got in trouble with the teacher because we were using language.
Well, like a true Gothamite would. I get it. Yeah, that's real. Yeah. Robert, what about you?
Batman. So
when I was young, of course, I have to. Michael, we're about the same age, so I used to do a routine. One of my first routines as a stand-up comic was about the Superman TV show and how he would stand there. There'd always be against the guy. He was facing the guy with a gun. Remember that episode? So and Superman, and he would stand there, and Superman, he would empty the gun into Superman, and he'd stand there and let the bullets just bounce off him, bing, 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 bing. But then the guy would run out of bullets, click, 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 and then he'd throw the gun at Superman, and he'd duck. It's like, oh, it's like, whoa. I mean, whoa, what are you doing there? Go load your gun. So I know that show very well. But to your question. I had to be, 8, 9, 10. I mean, and I agree with Michael about he didn't have superpowers. He was using it with his head and whatever he could come up with. And it was interesting. And it was also, it was really kind of interesting. Batman was, like I said, but the one thing I didn't go into ever as a kid, I never thought about, was the relationship with Robin.
We didn't think about that.
What's interesting is they haven't been able to crack that in any of the movies yet. That's the one thing they haven't been able to really. Because I don't know if they want to go there. Really, I mean, maybe in today's society they might. I don't know. It might be interesting.
I had this conversation.
Dark Knight Rises, they do, don't they? I mean, they
sort of.
Yeah. I had this conversation with Stan Lee, and Stan absolutely hated kid sidekicks, absolutely hated them. He said, Michael, if you're trying to make people believe that the movie situation or the TV situation could be real, it could be another universe, if you want them to take it seriously, how can you show an adult man palling around with a 13, 14, 15-year-old kid, keeping him up all night, exposing him to all of these dangers? He said it just absolutely does not work. And I agree with Stan. And I think for a lot of reasons, proteges matched up like that are tough. If on the other hand, you do Young Justice or Teen Titans and group them together as one, it kind of works.
Well, can I take issue with that for a second? I think,
of course you are,
that I think that you could do it, and you could also have a who knows what relationship with the two of them. Maybe it's a suppressed. I don't think it's going to do great commercially, but I think you could do it.
You could tell a story.
If we're not talking about a commercial success, I think you could actually. It would be interesting. Is it a suppressed relationship? Who knows? But I think, like I said, I don't think it'd be commercial as hell, but it'd be interesting. But who would have thought the Joker would have been as commercial as it was, right?
Well, I mean, that's a really good point. You're talking about a character as diabolical as the Joker, being able to find humanity. Who knows? If you have the right story, that's some amazing stuff that can happen. Now, between the three of you, you've been a part of the Batman iterations over the last 30 years. And he hasn't seemed to die in popularity in any real significant way. Why do you think that is? Why do we love Batman so much?
If I could open that one up, let's first start beyond the fact that he's a superhero with no superpowers that everyone can identify with. Let's go to the context of our times. Superheroes were originally born in the 1930s, and it was a time when there was depression. There was the dark specter of World War II. Gangsters were overrunning the country. People needed not only hope, but they also needed cheap escapist entertainment. So here today, what's the situation between the pandemic, a polarized country and world like we haven't seen in 100 years, all kinds of problems economically, problems with race and bigotry. We need heroes. Right. And I think these superheroes have become almost our modern day mythology in that sense, bringing us stories of hope and redemption.
Very well said. Very well said. Robert, I know you're a history buff. What do you want to add to that?
I think Michael's made a great point. Now, I also have to add, we live in a comic book society. I mean, since Star Wars, everything's been dumbed down. So it's like we're going for that. And we're also playing to a demographic for the most part. But be that as it may, I agree with the mythology, what Michael says about the mythology. And it's something that, it's a really good, superhero. I mean, it's a good hero, period, hero. And it transcends, and it's cartoonish, and it still is a comic book. So it starts with young. It starts very young. Right. I agree with that part of it. Later on, I got to ask Michael because Michael and I haven't talked that much in many years, and I got a lot of questions to ask Michael. But let Brett finish this one.
Sure.
I believe that Batman has. Well, one, Michael is absolutely correct. With given the circumstances that people have today, they need something to lean on or look up to. Mm-hmm. The thing I find most fascinating about Batman, which is, I think, the most enduring quality, is what Michael said earlier. He's a man. And the same thing with Joker. He was a man, right? They didn't have X-ray vision. They couldn't bounce bullets. All that stuff. And to me, that is something. Like you can go down the list of things, like you go to like TV success, like MacGyver. Like he was just a guy, but he could figure out a nuclear bomb with a pen and stuff, Or for instance, right now, what we're dealing with, and I won't name the show, it's on Apple, and it's so good. It starts with Ted. That's all I'll say. There you go. But my friend works on that, and he's the one that turned me on to it. He said it's because of the times. Because I don't think Apple thought the show was going to succeed, but because people need something to lift their spirits or to believe in or to look up to, a kindness that we don't see in the world today, I think is part of the main reason.
Can I add one thing? If I can add one thing real quick, then I'm sorry. The other part of this is, since 1988, these, for the exception of two of them, these have been very, very good special movies.
True.
These have been exceptional movies, with the exception of two of them. Michael, Mike, I got to ask you this. It's always been my theory that that in the first incarnation of the Batman series, not the Dark Knight series, that the first incarnation from 88 on, if you put them back to back to back to back to back, every hour gets progressively worse.
That's deep. Now we're gonna have to do a whole watch party just to see if.
Oh, no, you don't. No,
that's the first time I heard that theory.
That's a deep one. That's a deep one. We'll
have to ask
fans about that one. I like that. That's. I don't want to throw no stones. Obviously, I enjoyed aspects of all the movies, but that's a very interesting. I'm gonna have to rewatch everything now. Yeah, we've got a fan question. Bruce Evans wants to know, and this is just as pivotal. Do you have a favorite iteration of Batman?
Who are you asking that?
Everybody. Like, who's willing to jump into that water first?
I'll jump in first. I get asked this question all the time whenever I speak. What is the one true iteration of Batman? Who is the one true Batman? And the answer is very simple. It's the first Batman you were introduced to when you were 8 or 12 or 16. That is your Batman. Very true. And now, happily, because of the movies, video games, TV, animation, there are so many to choose from. And they all work within their own spheres, their own universes. And I think that's the only answer.
Well said. That's super diplomatic too, right?
That's a great
but is he asking in terms of like films, like, or television shows? He wants to know our favorite of all of them.
Like if you have one, do you have one?
Well, I have two, Michael and Christian.
Okay. Okay.
Those two are, I think, probably the closest to what my imagination always captured this guy.
Of course.
And also because I'm their father. So
there's another piece of mythology. There's always a father issue.
Always. It's true.
Always.
You know, it's interesting. I was at this party before the Oscars last year, and Michael was there, and my friend Bo Welch and Catherine O'Hara, we were talking to him because they know him really well because they did Beetlejuice with him. And Bo goes, "Oh, by the way, do you know Brad? He's your dad." And Mike looked at me and I looked at him and we both started laughing. So
Bo also did Batman Returns.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
no,
awesome.
but Robert knows Bo. He's one of my dear friends. We Zoomed last night.
Michael, I have a question.
Yeah.
To you. Again, we haven't talked. But
Yeah.
I think the biggest to me, do you think any of this happens? I mean, it would have happened perhaps. The single most important thing of this whole thing, the decision, does any of this happen without the decision of Tim Burton?
It happens, but in a very, very different way that is not earth-shaking. Tim absolutely changed Hollywood. He changed the perception the world culture has of comic books and comic book movies. He changed the image of superheroes, and he did it with one big idea and a corollary attached to it. And I will never forget this moment when, and it came up at the time. I said, "What do you mean you're going to hire Michael Keaton to play Batman? We want to do it dark and serious, and you want to hire Mr. Mom, a comedian?" And he said, "When you go from one medium to another," he said, "you have to make changes. And if you want audiences to see this first revolutionary, dark and serious comic book superhero movie and to buy it, to suspend their disbelief and buy into it," he said, "the only way you can do it is if this movie is not about Batman." Now, at that moment, I melted into the ground.
Wow.
And then he said, "This movie must be about Bruce Wayne. We've got to be able to convince audiences that Bruce Wayne is so obsessed, so driven to the point of being psychotic that they will go, oh yeah, that's a guy who would get dressed up as a bat suit and go fight a guy like the Joker." He goes, "Otherwise, we're going to get unintentional laughs from the audience." And if you look at the impact of that one big idea, look at every Marvel movie. It shouldn't be called Iron Man. They should be called Tony Stark.
It's true.
It shouldn't be called Spider-Man. It should be called Peter Parker.
Mm-hmm.
It has impacted every single genre movie from that point on. And then his corollary was, and Gotham City must be the third most important character in this movie, because if audiences don't believe in Gotham, they won't believe in Batman or Joker. And there I give all the credit. It's a combination of Tim and Anton first for what they created. And that also impacts every single genre movie since 1989, the design work and the vision.
Okay. However, I got to put a caveat on this.
This is good.
Everything you say is 100% true, but going back to the decision of Tim Burton, because you and I both know that John Peters and Peter Guber did not want Michael Keaton, because I talked to him about this. And I said, if it hadn't been Michael Keaton, because they weren't going as they were a little scared of the dark. They were a lot scared of how dark it was going to be. I asked John and Peter, who would you have cast? And it was Steve Martin, it was Bill Murray, or it was Chevy Chase. So let me tell you, that Tim Burton holding for Michael Keaton, who, by the way, had there been social media in that time, there's no way that Michael Keaton would have survived the onslaught that there is today. There was shit about that when they announced him to begin with. But in today's world, Guber and Peters, they was tough on Tim. And Tim is the reason, because they would have never hired Michael Keaton. The only reason that Warner Brothers went with him is because they had a hit with Beetlejuice that he was in. Mm-hmm. And that was a hit for them. And they went with, because he just had this movie Clean and Sober, which was a very terrific movie. Michael was a great actor in it.
Great. But
Guber and Peters, who, as you know, had a lot of weight, Michael. I mean, they were the giant apes there. If it was up to them, it would have been more like a TV series.
I agree with you 100%.
That's incredible.
I agree with you, Michael. I think most, as in Batman, and Tim's version to Todd's the Joker. I mean, when people talk to me about Joaquin, I always refer to it like we say, what was it like? And blah, blah, blah. And I'll say, well, we were, talked in the makeup trailer, and then he'd go into his trailer. And from that point forward, he was Arthur Fleck, and he was in his world too. He didn't speak to anyone. He stayed in character. So it was really, I agree with you in the sense that it's not the magic, it's the reality that makes a difference. The real person, the real character of the man he comes from. And
I think that goes back to what you guys are saying about the appeal of Batman. Michael is not who you would presume as Batman. It's the regular person. So that sense of being able to see yourself in that is perfect. We actually have a question. Justin Bernstein wants to know, what do you guys think about the reports that Michael is coming back to reprise the role of Batman? Is that exciting for you?
I hadn't heard that.
Yes, and I hope that he brings a reporter with him.
Of course. Listen. That little cameo that you had, spoiler alert, in Crisis on Infinite Earths, man, that made me so excited. And okay, so in your mind, Robert, what has Knox been up to throughout this entire time? Is he still a journalist? What's he doing now?
Well, what scenario? You can paint any scenario. I mean,
that's true.
Maybe
that's true.
Is he the editor of the paper? Is he getting squeezed now? He would be the editor of the paper who at his age would be getting squeezed out by a 30-year-old who knows social media much better than he does.
I picture him as an investigative reporter who just interviewed the president of the United States and has written a book about him.
And changed his last name.
I like that. Oh my goodness. Okay, so Brett, listen, to talk about your first stint, obviously you're playing a huge role in the Joker, but your first taste of the Batman goodness is in The Dark Knight Rises as the loving congressman who suffers so much being kidnapped by Selena Kyle. That had to be fun. Was that a great little experience there?
Yeah, it was fantastic. And the way that kind of happened, and like the scene that we shot in the bar where I get shot in the leg, the big shootout, that was the first thing. And I had literally flown the day before because I was doing a movie with Barbara Streisand at the same time. So I flew. I was doing both films at the same time, but I was shooting one in LA, one in London, and I flew, and I was so jet lagged. And she looked at me and I said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, it's perfect because you've just drugged me and done whatever you've done to me for 3 days, and I'm happy as as I could be." So I just went with it. So I just basically was half asleep, and and
it just kind of
Chris
works.
is such a brilliant filmmaker. I mean, we shot, I think he had 4 different types of cameras. They had an IMAX camera. They had all these different, and he even said, "Just say the line." And I went, "Well, it's so loud. Those IMAX cameras like," and he said, "Don't worry about that." And of course, then he had me do it wild a couple of times, and that's what he used. You fit the two together. Nice. I said, "Call me."
I understood that whole, that vibe. I was in the same place with you. Actually, Jeannie 4 says, love the deep dive into the Joker character. Do you think that's possible to do with any other villains? And I think that's a great one because obviously we've had iterations of Joker before the Joker movie really does that deep dive and still was able to uncover a lot. What do you guys think in terms of being able to explore other characters, and which one would you like to see first? Michael, I'm going to ask you that one.
Yeah, I think, first of all,
which ones do you have the rights to?
Everyone.
That's the best answer.
One of the most amazing things about the Batman movies and Batman-related movies is 3 times now they have redefined what a superhero or comic book movie could be. Tim Burton did it in '89. Chris Nolan did it with the Dark Knight trilogy, and Todd Phillips did it with Joker. Completely redid what this could be and how you can approach a movie like this. It's incredible. And that's ultimately maybe its greatest legacy. And what Todd did in his genius can be applied to, I think, any other villain. And if any villain was studied like that, and there are some great possibilities. One of my favorite episodes of Batman the Animated Series, which I love, absolutely love, dealt with Mr. Freeze and the loss of his wife. The empathy the emotions that created. I could see, you know, and now caution, I'm putting on my fanboy hat, not my producing hat. This has nothing to do with any plans or this or that.
We can hope, though. We can hope. Don't take the hope away from us, Michael. Don't do that.
I don't want that part on the internet. It's just that as a fanboy, I could see taking that iteration of Mr. Freeze and doing something amazing with his backstory. But it doesn't matter if it's Scarecrow, Riddler, Catwoman, Penguin. They're so juicy. And part of their success has been their mystique, where all the dots haven't been dotted and the T's haven't been crossed. And it allows filmmakers and writers to come in and take it to places it's never been taken before.
I love that. I love that. Robert, Brett, do you want to throw in any fan options as Michael did?
I think Michael said it pretty well. You know, if you get good writing, see, I agree with Brett about the Joker play. It was about today's society. I mean, if you never heard of a Batman movie in your life, that movie's going to work. You know, it's about media. It's about that Joker movie is a really good movie. You know, and it's about something. I mean, I really think years from now, Joker is the movie that's, you know, you're going to look back and say that was, you know, 2000, 2001, I mean, 2020. I mean, that was 2019. Joker is, you know, the other movies are pretty much set anywhere. The Joker movie is set in a specific, the more I watch it, I say, you know, this is a work of art. I mean, no joke of no
literal,
you know, art, comic book art. I mean, there's a lot to like in Joker. I mean, there really is.
Well, I've seen it a few times.
The miscasting of Thomas Wayne, not.
Yeah, well, he could have
someone who would have been really good in that. Alec Baldwin.
Yeah.
Wow. Come on, Robert. That was cold. That was cold.
No, it's an inside joke with Robert and I think Michael knows what it is too. But because Alec,
no, he wouldn't. No, let me correct it. No, he wouldn't have been. He would have been Alec Baldwin.
There you go.
Play Thomas Wayne.
Oh,
and
wow.
He after I met with Todd and I thought I had it, and then I heard Alec was doing it, and then from the understanding I had is he heard that Todd wanted him to play him as Trump, and he said, "I'm not doing that," and he walked away from the film. And Todd said, "I'm not doing that," but Alec had it.
And then Brett's take was Hillary.
Yeah, I was trying to do Hillary.
Listen, I have to admit,
taking any kind of character you have, whether it's Mr. Freeze, whether it's Batman, whether it's Spider-Man, it's any of those. If you don't start with humanity, you know, in this given day and age, the way they like to jump into a film and have it like boom, but unless you actually understand who the person is, what their heart and soul is about, and you know what makes them bleed, you know, metaphorically, that you're not going to care.
Right.
You know, and you know, honestly, at the premiere of Joker, I laughed at the end because, you know, the Keystone Cop thing at the end, and he just killed the therapist. And my wife elbowed me because, you know, and no one else was laughing. I went, "That's brilliant. It's brilliant." You know, the idea of taking such a deep, dark, horrible story of mental illness and guns and all this stuff and turning it into, as Robert said, a piece of art, which I agree wholeheartedly. It's a phenomenal achievement.
Of course.
You know,
of course.
Because it's not just, it's like sort of like Taxi Driver. It's one of those movies you see and you go, "Oh my God, I want to see that again. I want to see that again. I just want to see what he did." And the weird thing is, the more I watch it, I think I've watched it 3 or 4 times because I don't really watch myself. You know, I get a little kind of weird about just always watching myself, which I don't like to do. But I learn new things every time and every viewing. And
absolutely.
Things I missed.
Theater owners were reporting that as people were on the way out, people who didn't even know by the way, you guys remember movie theaters?
Right.
Okay. As people were walking out, they literally began talking to each other in the lobby, and there would be these impromptu discussion groups where they would hang out for 20, 30 minutes after the show. Like, well, what was real and what was only a delusion of the Joker, or was the whole thing only a delusion of the Joker? And people were talking about it. And that was one of the tip-offs that this was something really, really special on a certain level.
Absolutely. And Brett, I gotta give you some love, because one of the things that you did was you presented a version of Thomas Wayne that is now more popular in the comic books, but it was the notion of him being a true Gothamite and not easily pushed around. You know, a lot of times when we see the death of the Waynes, Thomas is a loving father, loving husband who jumps in the way of a bullet, but you don't see how, because Gotham is hardcore, he's not a slouch. You know, if you cross the line, he'll throw some hands at you. And there was something really refreshing about seeing that in action. Was that something that, you know, really kind of connected with you as a father?
Well, as a father, but also, I mean, you know, my history, my you know, as Robert knows, I come from Texas originally, and my family, my father's family, not ours, but my father's side of the family are very powerful, rich oil people.
Okay.
It was around that somewhat, and I know a lot of people who are worth a lot of money I've met over the years and become friends with. You don't mess with them when they want something and they're going to go after it because they're smart. They have a financial stake in something. You don't mess around with that. I mean, sometimes they fail, but for the most part, those guys are used to winning. And I think that's why Thomas Wayne's successful as a character, because I played him not like Trump, but actually a successful businessman, you know, who really knew the world he lived in. But I also believe, truly, running for mayor, that he really wanted to make change.
Right.
You know, and he's a tough guy. You know, he's not someone that's going to be bullied or, like, you know, shy away from a fight.
Right.
What Brett's saying is great, because, you know, as you're hearing how he built the character about rich guys and about rich, powerful guys, and running for political, by not presenting it as Donald Trump and presenting it as a different type of a rich guy. That movie's much more political. It's much, otherwise it would have been a parody. It would have been too on the nose. This movie is about America and social. I mean, and you know, social issues and capitalism issues. It's a much more political thing than making it Donald Trump.
That's brilliant.
The weird, you know, Michael, you talk about movie theaters. What is it? Isn't Joker the highest grossing R-rated movie in the history of film?
I think so.
Yes.
You know, if they don't get this coronavirus thing, we're going to hold on to that title. The weird thing, they didn't even sell that to China.
Wow.
That's right.
Kind of money without China. Imagine if it had gone into China.
China could have doubled it.
Right.
Doubled the take at the end of the day.
And there's still time, right? That if they release it there, it still counts, correct?
Oh, yeah, we count towards the
okay.
Well, I don't think China's.
What was the reason it wasn't in China?
There's only, I think, 10 movies a year into China. That's it. Is that right, Michael? Do you know?
The content was never going to fly in China at this time.
Right.
Got you. I'm sorry, Michael, you were going to say something. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Yeah, if I could just throw out an interesting historical fact that is not directly related to Batman, but is to Robert. Robert, I don't know if you have much of a recollection of this, but way back, right after our first Batman movie, I optioned the rights from Marvel to Luke Cage, Hero for Hire. And this was when Marvel was mired. All they had was Captain America and Fantastic Four, neither of which, and maybe Punisher, neither of which could be released theatrically. They just couldn't be released theatrically.
Right.
And Marvel was in a mess. And I brought Robert in, and I set this up at Motown Productions, which had a movie unit at Universal. And we had a meeting with Universal, Motown, Robert, where we talked about doing this as the first real true blue Marvel movie. And Robert, I don't know how well you remember that, but you had some great ideas. We talked about ways to make it feel real in the tone of New York in the late 70s, early 80s. The whole world could have been changed.
It's true.
This is now a parallel universe. But he and I were on the verge of doing it when, what do you think happened right after that meeting? Motown folded, and then Universal gets sold.
Wow. That would have been crazy.
Was that Suzanne DePass?
Suzanne was the head of Motown Productions, and Lois Bonfiglio was the production executive.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, Michael, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Michael, do you remember, you said something, the other thing about Tim Burton, and coming back to that, you mentioned Anton first. And without a doubt, he is the, if Tim Burton's one, Anton, and the casting, the Anton first, demons notwithstanding. Do you remember the first time you went to Pinewood Studios and you saw Gotham City, the set, what that felt like?
It was mind-blowing. Robert, you remember my partner, Ben Melniker.
Of course.
Ben, who was my dad's age, he ran MGM in its Tiffany days. All divisions reported to Ben. He put together the deals for Ben-Hur, Dr. Zhivago, 2001: A Space Odyssey. And as we were walking through those 5 square blocks of Gotham City on the back lot of Pinewood, Ben turned to me and said, Michael, I thought never in my life would I see sets more magnificent than Ben-Hur. And this has it beat completely. And the other part of that was my son was 8 at the time. My daughter was 4. And Andy Smith took them for a ride in the Batmobile through Gotham City. And as they were sitting there, it was a 2-seater. So my daughter was kind of jammed in the middle. And my son said, Sarah, if I press this button right here, it's an ejector seat and it's going to shoot you through the roof. You're going to land on top of one of those buildings. To this day, my daughter, who's well into her 30s, still will not sit in the middle seat in the front of any car.
That is impact right there. That is brilliant. That's amazing. Michael, you taught one of the first accredited comic book courses at the college level.
No, I taught the first.
The very first, not one of, the first, literally the first. That's incredible. That is incredible. Because we actually have one of your former students, Adam Blasucci, I believe is how you pronounce that, said that they took your online course a few years ago and wanted to know, what was your favorite part of teaching Batman for comic book history?
The online course we did, it was me, my son David, who dealt with like 1980 and up, and Stan Lee.
Yes.
And it was the 3 of us. And we did it for the Smithsonian Institution because they wanted something definitive on the history of comics and the rise of the superheroes. It's still available online through edX, and it is free. Last count, we had 165,000 students in the class from over 150 countries. And I loved every minute of it because it was anecdotal, but filled with facts, and set as Brett and Robert have been saying, which is so important, set in the context of its day, of its time, to explain why things were the way they were and why they evolved the way that they did. My favorite thing, they allowed me to go into the sub-basements of the Smithsonian Institution and rifle through their collection of comic books, original artwork, and memorabilia. All I could say, it would be like at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, getting into that warehouse and having, free time in it. It was really magnificent.
Yeah, when the zombie apocalypse happens, I'm going to the Smithsonian, and that's just where I'm holding up. That sounds amazing. We are getting close to time here, but I want to ask a brilliant question. Jason Phillips wants to know, for all of you, and we'll start with Robert, if you could choose to be any superhero, who would it be?
Probably Superman, because of the superpowers. It gives you a big leg up.
Of course, it really does. Brett?
I'd probably go with Batman because 1, he is a genius, and 2, he's really rich.
That's fair. That's definitely fair. I
got the worries there. So
it's kind of simple.
He's a bachelor. It's like, so yeah, that would probably be my choice. I mean, I don't know about if I want superpowers really, because then unlike anyone else's, and I like living in the world that I live in.
Good answer.
Now, Michael, I'm kind of setting you up for this one because I know your answer, and I'm hoping that it's something that you talk about in your book that I'm going to offer for you to plug as well with your answer.
Well, if you're expecting me to say Batman, that's just far too obvious. So I can't do it. So let me say that when I was a kid, it would have been Superman because of his ability to fly.
Right.
But when I hit puberty, it would have been Superman because of his X-ray vision. And I won't go any further on that point. And now as an old dude, it's probably Superman because of his ability to fly.
Okay. All right.
Well, and one other thing about Superman too, he's also a reporter. He's also a journalist. And I find that part of it very interesting. That just lends itself to, what I'm interested in.
Quite true. Well, since I was wrong in the assumption that you would pick Batman. Can you tell us about, real quick, about The Boy Who Loves Batman?
Yeah, real quickly, it is my memoir. It was originally published in hardback by Chronicle Books. The new revised trade paperback came out recently. And it is the story of how me, as a kid in my 20s, went to DC Comics and bought the rights to Batman and set out to make dark and serious Batman movies after the torture to me as a total fanboy comic book Batman geek when I was 15, watching the Batman TV series on TV. And realizing to my horror that they were making a joke out of Batman and that the whole world was laughing at Batman. Mm-hmm. And I made my vow that night, like young Bruce Wayne once made a vow, except my folks were safe upstairs in the kitchen, that, someday I would show the world the true Batman, the Dark Knight, who battled these deeply disturbed criminals in the shadows. And it takes you on that journey. And then once I bought the rights, from that time on, I was turned down by every single studio in Hollywood. They told me it was the worst idea they ever heard. And it took us 10 years, not till 1989, before we were finally able to get that first movie out. And it was a tortuous quest, but kind of shows that if you've got a passion and you're willing to get up off the damn couch, you can make your dreams come true.
That's right. Oh my God. So well said. As we get out of here, I want to give you guys an opportunity to say one last thing to the fans. Brett, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm just thankful you guys tuned in, and that if you have any more questions or any thoughts, I'd be happy to answer. I'd be happy to talk to you, whatever this is. So, I got a computer, an iPad, and I can Zoom anytime.
There we go. Robert?
First of all, I want to thank you for allowing. This was a lot of fun. I mean, we should take this on the road if there's ever another road. There is a lot to discuss over this that we haven't touched on. I mean, I brought this out. He goes, we haven't touched on. Michael, do you remember when they first showed this and people couldn't make out what it was?
What?
Oh, no. That was a big deal.
Yeah.
Michael, do you remember?
Yeah.
Wasn't it a poster, like a thing,
It was just this. It didn't say Batman. It was just this. And people, it was like a Rorschach test. What am I looking at? Am I looking at the gold or am I looking at the black? I mean, they had this huge billboard on Wilshire Boulevard.
Wow.
And people would go, what is that? Do you know, it's Michael, you remember this, right?
I remember it. I remember they said 17% of the people saw teeth and tonsils instead of a black bat. I also know that it was the first time in movie history that a movie was initially marketed without the title on the posters and billboards.
That's brilliant.
And yet people knew what it was. It was absolutely brilliant what they did.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness. Michael, one last thing for the fans from you.
Yeah, first of all, I am so honored to be here with these two gentlemen who are an integral part of making movie history and making Batman and the Joker as popular as they have. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. You guys helped make my dreams come true. To the Batman fans, I only say this. I am a total geek fanboy. By the time I graduated high school, I had over 30,000 comic books dating back to 1936. I was at the first Comic-Con ever held on the planet Earth, which is a story in and of itself. So as a fanboy geek, comic book geek, I thank you for your support and for your continued support. I appreciate it a lot.
Oh my God, that's so well said. To all the fans, if you're watching live or watching later on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube, please check out those paid exclusive experiences like one-on-one private video chats, autographs, custom video recorded messages, especially get those copies of The Boy Who Loved Batman, which I believe, Michael, you're going to sign those, right? Personalize and sign those? Oh my God. I'm about to be one of the first ones to sign up as soon as we log off of here. Definitely make sure, guys, that you check out our upcoming panels. Tomorrow, we've got Arian, the Secret of the Seasons voiceover panel. We've got a Walking Dead fan discussion with Fandom Spotlite. On the 8th, we've got the stars of scary movies and Bruce Campbell's Last Man Standing. We've got Shadowhunters coming, Star Wars, Bruce Campbell versus Ted Raimi. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the stuff for you. You want to be here, come back, tune in. I am Victor Dandridge, the hardest working man in comics, saying thank you to everyone watching, and you guys have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Aaron Ashmore, and you are watching Fandom Spotlight. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe like now. Oh, and have fun and follow your fandom.